Hey, this is Eric and Stephanie with Productivity Advocates, and this is what comes from a mind of a mechanic that has a master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology, and Stephanie that is really great with analytics. So today we are talking about leadership accountability and productivity in it, because leaders could definitely be the problem. Um, and they don't like to always see that they're the problem, but honestly, everybody is a human being and they can always be, you know, they could be the problem. And if somebody doesn't look inward as a leader and they have too much pride in it, then they're never going to be able to drive their organization to productivity and fuel their teams correctly. So today we want to talk about the check engine light in a car and how it compares to check productivity. So a car, it tells you, flat out tells you it has a problem. Sometimes check engine lights to get more urgency out of you, they start flashing. And in the owner's manual, it actually tells you to pull over immediately if your check engine light is starting to flash because it could do more damage. And it obviously is having immediate trouble. Well, what check engine lights or check productivity lights does your organization have? And as a leader, you're the one that should be aware of that because you are the driver. You have all the gauges. You are in control, steering, driving, accelerating, braking, shifting into gear, stopping, and powering off the vehicle or the organization to produce the uh, power to move it forward. You have all that information. So if you're not seeing those check engine lights or those indicators in the organization that you are having troubles, then you're not looking hard enough. So, what does the check engine light look like in an organization? Um, Employee burnout. If employees aren't engaged, I spoke with somebody last night that they are um, having issues within their workplace, and their leaders will not give them the resources that they need to do their job, but then they add more responsibilities on them. And well, you can do it with less, they said. You need to be more agile, they said. Well, is that really fair to put more on them when you're not even giving them the resources to be able to complete their job and to do it in the way that they want you to? Uh, that's that's one way to look at it. What are other ways, Stephanie?
Um, just is it lagging? You can tell that there's probably a check engine light that way. And it could be just the employees don't feel safe. Maybe you're using fear and intimidation, or maybe there's drama with leadership or even just within employees themselves.
Absolutely. And I mean, if leaders don't stay on top of it, the performance drops within the organization, the profits drop. Um, so many different aspects of the business will just go down, and who's there to blame? And should you actually blame anybody, or should you just get the issues diagnosed so that you can move forward and keep moving forward? That's one of Walt Disney's best or number one sayings, keep moving forward, figure it out. Well, if you don't take the time to figure it out, then you're just going to continue to watch your organization go down more and more. And
So what do you, sorry.
nope, go ahead.
So do you think that there's early signs that are kind of um, can be generalized? for that lack of productivity?
Yeah, it's okay. Let's take as a leader walks in a room, we have something that we call indicators. We've talked about indicators a lot. Well, you can almost feel a person's presence as they walk in a room. And I've been interviewing people lately about if their leaders try to lead with fear and intimidation. There are some leaders that do, and they think that that's productive. Well, that indicator as you walk in a room is that you're putting your employees in fear. And the person I talked to last night does not like talking to their leaders because their leaders are constantly belittling them and not very supportive. And they're very vocal about it, honestly. And so that could be a sign. I mean, if you find yourself belittling somebody or being negative towards somebody in a work environment, well, what is it? Is it the employee's issue or is it the leader's issue? In that situation, I would say it was the leader issue because you should never belittle somebody. You should always be supportive, positive. I mean, it's so hard to be, or it's so easy to be negative to other people and rather than being positive. And what's wrong with just simply showing appreciation to another person? It's just kind of interesting that it's, you know, people don't think of that, and they should think of that first. We are human beings, we're not machines. And by doing you know, that's, yeah, we don't want to dehumanize employees by not treating them like human beings.
So what steps do you think that those types of leaders should do to be better?
That's an interesting question because a lot of people want results almost immediately overnight. And it does not happen. Once you've lost trust with people and especially employees, it's going to take months, if not years, to regain that trust in them that you're actually going to follow through. We have an interviewed an organization and I've told this story before, but they put up on the walls, "Oh, we empower you." We had all these great sayings. They left them up for a couple months, and then I interviewed the employees, and I'm like, "So has anything changed?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's actually gotten worse. We feel like we got micromanaged more. We feel that we had all these expectations to fulfill this new initiative, the positive work environment to do." And yet we get less trust. It actually went completely opposite. So the actions of the leaders did not follow what they were saying. And so that changed the whole environment because the actions did not follow what the initiative was from the leaders. The leaders had the expectations of the employees to do it, but they didn't follow it themselves. And they continue to lay off employees, and I wonder why. There's same leadership's in place. So, but if you do want an effective one, then you as a leader have to lead it. You have to drive the initiative for positivity. You can't expect all the employees to do it. It has to be leader down, not employee up.
So what, when we're focusing on productivity, what ways do you suggest we measure that, or at least leaders should measure productivity to see if it's actually dropping so that they can look internally or look at their employees to benefit that productivity?
So there's a lot of metrics that you can actually do and KPIs. Um, every organization kind of has their own way of trying to track productivity. Some are very effective. Some, the leaders just simply interview their employees, which I found is quite productive. One place that I interviewed, they talk to every one of their employees. They have about 70 employees. They interview them quarterly to just see, and the leaders themselves do it. So they have a very hands-on approach to it, and they just interview them in person. Then they let the numbers really guide because um, the sales go up, the sales continue to be where their benchmarks are, and they do it in a very personal manner. And so sometimes just the numbers will work, and it depends on the size of the organization too, but it really can be broken down to departments. And it once again comes from the leadership down. If the CEO executive team is over certain departments, then they can let it go down in an organizational chart and really know what's going on with the organization. Then the big thing is trusting, letting the employees say what they need to and not hold it against them, but really think about it and look at leadership themselves to see if they're the problem once again and be able to apply it. Don't blame, but think about it critically. I talked to a person that had worked for a government agency, and they gave back the feedback because the leaders stressed the importance of giving back proper feedback. So they did, and they ended up getting moved from that department, and nothing happened. That's counterproductive. That's not going to help the situation of the check engine, check productivity light. And then they flat out lied about it and moved the person and didn't do anything with the other leader. And the other leader was having some major issues, and the employees needed to get things done with it. No, they got moved. And I had a situation like that as well, that I had a problem, and I honestly put a hostile work environment on my leader because they were very aggressive towards me. They would not listen. They actually started calling me, uh, the exact term was, do you have psychological issues in working in a team environment? And the people that I immediately worked around all loved me, but they wanted me to do something, that they wanted me to work in a different area than was my area. And I said, I just don't think, I don't understand why you want me to go work in their area and help them get leads and then come back to work mine just because you wanted me to work in a team sales environment and we didn't split commissions. And so I was just presenting the question. I wasn't heated. And that's when they said that. I was just like, that's overstepping your bounds. I ended up getting moved to a different division, and that team sales environment was abolished 3 months later. And so obviously it was an issue, but why did I get moved when I wasn't the one that had the problem? And so it's interesting why leaders don't really look at the whole situation. They have the whole dashboard, they have all the information, but yet they won't look at it and they won't take accountability for the opportunities they have. I mean, you think about it, you drive a car, and if people drive cars aggressively, usually end up getting in an accident. And then they blame the other person. Why were you right there? They say, or this wouldn't have happened if you wouldn't have been there. I mean, it's quite funny. Road rage is another one. And not that, maybe there is road rage kind of incidents within the organization because people do get aggressive. And I don't know, that's something that we'd have to look at more. So,
When going back to, you were talking about the company that interviewed their employees quarterly. Gallup actually has a statistic 23% higher profitability for organizations that treat employee feedback as a continuous loop.
oh,
So they
see,
acknowledge the information and they do assess it and do something about it.
yeah, and that's exactly what they have to do. I mean, you diagnose a car and it's low on performance because it has a spark plug issue, it has a sensor issue, something to that effect. Well, that means that it's costing you more gas because it's not running efficiently. Why wouldn't you go in and get it checked? But there's some people that are like, oh, I just don't want to fix the car at this time. Your car doesn't run well, and the more that you drive it, the more that it's gonna hinder the performance of it, but it could also cause more damage. I mean, you have a bad spark plug and you don't fix it, it's going to end up hurting your catalytic converter. Well, if your catalytic converter goes out, there's some that are like $4,000. Average is probably around $800. But still, by spending $200 to fix the spark plug, over continuing to drive it with a check engine light flashing, that's not productive. It's just like, okay, people drive on brakes all the time. I heard a grinding noise, but I just had to get to this next destination. We had somebody a few months ago that just kept driving and their brake pad ground down so far that it fell out. And then they didn't have brakes. And it's like, oh, interesting. How much does that happen in organizations? Well, we're having a lot of troubles, but we just had to get this project through. But if you're hurting a person and you're causing the productivity issue by by not looking at the whole situation, then you're the one that's driving that organization down, and eventually it's just going to stop. That's all there is to it. So,
So, in what ways does accountability intersect with recognizing team fatigue or burnout?
well, the interesting thing about that is we've been talking about accountability a lot, especially with leaderships, and there's a reason for that. A lot of people that we interview do say that if the leaders would just simply look at the whole situation and realize that them sitting back and blaming others is counterproductive, then yeah, the teams will go down. I interviewed somebody the other day. They're like, we, I am doing the smallest amount to keep my job, but um, I'm not productive, and they admitted it. And they're like, our culture is awful, and it just isn't. It's not working out. But I need my job, and so I'm doing what I do, but I don't do anything extra. So they proved that, and they admitted it, and that's what's interesting is they were completely honest with me because I had them out of the work environment and there was nobody else around and they knew that I wasn't going to say anything. And that's one of the biggest things is as people do talk to me, I don't want to blame other people. I don't want to blame leadership. I want to learn from the past to be able to help direct their future and not continually harp, well, you did this in the past, you did this. No, you did do things in the past, but we're not really focused on that. You're going to focus on the future because that's the only thing that you can change. Otherwise, keep focusing on the past and see how that works for you. It's not going to, keep moving forward, just like Disney said.
Yeah, with coaching volleyball, that's one thing my girls have issues with is they focus on their mistakes. You can't do anything about it. Why are we dwelling on what happened in the past?
Oh yeah. And don't they say that sports is like 80% mental and 20% skill?
Yeah. Well, and I actually read this book, I can't remember, but it's like mental toughness for young athletes. And they say you play better when you let your subconscious just play, you let your body just play and you don't think about it. You're not getting in your head and you're just letting your mind and body just do its thing that you've been practicing for so long.
Absolutely. As a firefighter EMT, I'm not one that I like blood and gore. I hate seeing people suffer. I was in it 14 years and I went into my training mode. I didn't think about it. And I did exactly what my training is. And that's a good, thought for anybody that's in a workplace because they got hired for a certain position and they know their position well. But the things that hinder them is fear and intimidation in the workplace, um, the wrong culture. That's what hinders their mind. Just like you're saying, if if you don't have that mental blocking you, then how much more are you going to progress within your organization and with your skills or your roles and responsibilities? It just seems so simple to me, but there's so much pride with in leadership that, and it is sad to say, there's so much pride that they need to look at it and, you know, be more servant type leadership. And that's what the world needs right now is servant type leadership and situational style so that they can switch back and forth to what needs to be done. Because sometimes you do need to go in and, you know, I I put it as a car metaphor again. Sometimes you need to shift the driving styles to get accomplish a task, but you have to create the right environment to do that. If you're in a vehicle and you knew that your gas was below a quarter, but you're trying to go on a 300-mile trip, well, that's not going to last. And so you have to fuel it first to be able to get the protection next. With with leadership, they actually expect you to produce the energy first, then they'll sometimes fuel you correctly to do it. But it's all about fueling first to get the productivity and the energy out of the power out of the organization. And if leaders would just take that simple solution of fueling your team first to get productivity, produce productivity, they could get so much more done. So much an opportunity to change the way things are. So,
So with the leadership and accountability and then talking about fueling your team, how do you what do you think that means in day-to-day actions?
I number one thing, positive psychology. There was a study done in the 1940s on just these mice, and the mice, uh, one one group of the mice were called something that just demeaned them. One was very positive, and that's all they did is they created an environment of negativity for the one and a creative positive, and the mice that were positive just excelled. They didn't change anything how they fed them or how they it's just it's simply how they talked to them. And it was a study that was supposed to be done to help teachers understand the true potential of their students and being open-minded about their potential. And I was like, oh, that's quite interesting because when I was in school, I was very quiet and we moved a lot. And so every year I was at a new school. And as I was at a new school, teachers didn't know me and they always thought that I was, not very smart. Turned out that I was just observing everything. And yeah, I wasn't very smart. I didn't apply myself the way that I could, but I didn't believe I could, honestly. At 18, I had a third grade reading level, and I didn't graduate high school until I was 21, 22. Let's see, yeah, it's 21. And now I've got a master's degree in my master's program. I got a perfect 4.0 and graduated summa cum laude. And so was it me? Was it teachers? I don't really blame anybody for it because it was also my home circumstances. And so if leaders would realize that their fear, intimidation, anger, pride, the way that they hold themselves, they're indicators. Like we talk about all the time, they're indicators, tell everything, and they direct the work environment. And I truly believe that. So they just need to look at it. And if that's the way they want to lead a work environment, then they need to, you know, they need to do some self reflection and see if they're the cause.
When growing up, my dad always said, I don't know like where he got it or what, he always said it takes 10 positives to correct a negative. And I'm like, it's easy to be negative and it's easy to believe. I mean, what? your employee or your leaders are telling you that whether you suck or whether you're good, and it's hard to fix that if they're being negative and belittling you or scaring you.
Absolutely. And that's the thing about it is it's a continuous thing. Leaders that go in and try to intimidate and or use fear, anything, they are just killing their work environment, and it's counterproductive. And there's a lot of people out there that we would totally be able to help, but there's a lot of leadership that we won't. And so that's why we actually interview the leaders first, because if the leaders aren't on board and if they're not the right people, I actually won't work with them because it won't work for them. And this organization's not necessarily about the profits. It's more about helping create work environments for people to really thrive. That's why I put this the whole business together is helping mental stability within the workplace because people are great. And if leaders would see that and understand that, they could get so many more profits. But it's not about the profits, it's about the people. And so there's continuous things that you can do as like a tune-up and maintenance for your cars. My wife just started in mental health counseling. They do weekly meetings and they do drawings. They do quarterly parties. They are always on top of things. They interview each other and make sure that people are good. It's a huge working environment and they're growing like, you know, exponentially. And it's because of the leadership. And they realize that they're in a different work environment with mental health, which they're trying to help people. So they're really trying to build their mental health counselors. Super simple system, and they are on top of it. And they're accountable for what they're doing. But you can see their controlled growth, and they're growing, every year they're growing and they're doing really well.
So, with fear and intimidation being possible roadblocks in engagement, what other common roadblocks do you think there are?
Um, Biggest one, or one of the biggest ones, is not having the right tools for the employees to succeed. The ergonomics of the office setting or the business setting. Um, there's some things that make it a lot easier for us as mechanics. There's so many tools out there that if we use the right tools to get the job done, it'll save us hours. Those tools are sometimes expensive. We could spend $10,000 on just a simple scanner and programmer for a car. Um, they just changed the Freon systems. Well, that machine's about $8,000, and so with us as mechanics, there's always things changing that we could always buy tools to help us to do our job and accomplish it. But in a different working environment, there could be programs that could be helping people. There could be simple, breaks that you could go tell them to go for a walk. There you could bring in a therapist and just have them come and talk to people on a weekly basis and to help them to get through anything they might be working through. There are so many things out there that if a leader was truly a servant type leader and looked at their employees constructively, they could figure it out because each employee is an individual. And honestly, each organization has their individual culture or personality, I call it. And if you go into a work environment and you have that personality or that culture defined, organized, communicated correctly, then you could actually, you know, people would know what to expect as they come to work. And then they could identify or they could change their style to fit that one if it's a healthy one, but it would have to be a healthy one.
So, do you know of an example where a leadership made a shift where it was needed for for a roadblock and boosted their engagement and productivity?
I have not been able to find one yet because we would love to work with more organizations that do have a problem that we could, honestly. There's people that I've talked to that have already done this, but us Yeah, let's leave that out. Let's go to closing reflection because that's the biggest thing is I have not been able to find, let's be honest about it. I've not been able to find a leader that would actually do what we're trying to do in Utah County. So I'm looking elsewhere out of the state to really go in and help them to do that. So let's close at this time and it's like leaders just look at yourselves and realize that there is so much opportunity for you to create the right working environment to be able to really drive your organization and produce the power to get the profits that you want, but also create a work environment that people feel safe, secure, and want to come to work and utilize their skills and abilities to really, power the organization forward. So thank you for your time and leaders, go and look and try and do the best that you can to create that working environment to drive productivity.